Hey now, welcome to the Dirty Side of the Track, America's leading Formula One podcast. I'm Brian, that's Rob. About 10 minutes ago, we wrapped up the Abu Dhabi Grand Prix and the 2024 season. Tear goes down my face. Rob, how are you, man?
I'm confused. I'm confused because, as we'll get into, I think the race was a bit of a damp squib, but wrapped around this damp squib was so many things that mattered and happened, whether it be titles being won or drivers leaving teams, drivers leaving the sport. So there was all this kind of like sentimental value wrapped around a bit of a damp squib of a race. But we'll get there. We'll get there as to what we thought about it all. Um, as always, we will hit the news and social, of which there was a lot building up to the final race of the season.
Seriously.
Brian even went and found some video vault stuff. We've got killer Qualy and killer Qualy review because that was amazing. Then we'll talk about the race. Little bit of a look back of the season, but we probably won't drain it too much because we'll do a proper end of season review at some point. So, shall we jump in, Mr. Sapp?
Let's do it.
Okay, so before we go into news and social, there's a couple of housekeeping items from last week. One of the downsides of scrambling to come and record the moment everything finishes is maybe don't put as much prep into certain things and remember to say things. So last week's Qatar race predictions featured a Middle Eastern version of the F1 theme tune, and it was epic. And we forgot to say thank you to John. John on the Discord sent it over to us. It was brilliant. The whole thing was about 3 minutes long. At some point, we'll have to find a place, maybe in the off season when we need
Yes.
content. We'll just play that.
It's so good.
It
John,
was
thank you so much, man.
so good. And then I used the joke about Checo checking the radio last week, and then Colapinto just popping by, like the joke at the traffic lights. And I couldn't remember where I'd seen it online. And the Hot Circuit account on Blue Sky kind of said, "Oh, I think that was my joke. That's so cool. I was just there listening to the pod and heard my joke. I was like, I'm so sorry I didn't give you a shout out." It's like, no, it's fine. It was just amazing hearing it. I'm like, Hot Circuit, and I think looking at the bio, maybe the name is Pete. Thank you for the joke, and continue to send them our way because
Yeah,
if we see them, we will shout them out.
full credit. And I have been traveling a bunch for work. Unfortunately, I got one more week of it this coming week, but I've been a little absent from the Discord. And I want to just say I'm back, baby. And this last week, I returned back to the Discord in full glory. And Matt, when we finished Qatar, we tied. Matt and I tied for fantasy first place because we both used the Unlimited, had the same team. And he said his team name is Shoey Transmitted Disease. He goes, where's my Shoey? And so last night, if you join the Discord, you can see me doing a shoey in honor of that tie.
And I got to say, sometimes Sap does some things down the 3 years now, 3 seasons we've covered. Along the way, he's done some things that he finds really funny, and like you just have to humor him and go, "Nice one, Sap," because no one else finds it funny. But the shoey was brilliant. This goes into the other bucket of genius from Sap. So well done, Sap.
And I had to, at the end, I realized I was drinking all the beer in there. And so I had to show you that there was some. So a couple drops came out at the very end, and then it was rolling off my beard.
That's just the accidental genius of it is what just makes it even better. So you've got to join our Discord and go and check that one out. That's a Discord exclusive. Look at that with clickbait to join the Discord.
Look at this. We're finally figuring this thing out after 3 years.
3 years, yeah. Okay. Let's hit the news and social then. So, the story that will not die, that has been rumbling on like Groundhog Day forever, this time around seems to be being carried by people like Nate and the other journalists really going after it with some sort of credibility. Is we maybe just watched Checo, well, to foreshadow here and spoil the race a little bit, crash out of his last ever race for Red Bull. So
I
yeah,
mean, we've said this for a long time, right? We've renamed the Pits Award every week after the race in honor of the man, the myth, the legend.
Sergio Checo!
I got to use it now. I may not be able to use this next season. And so we've wondered how will Checo hold on to a seat? And there have been 8,000 different versions, from his marketing ability and the merch he sells to the pay he brings, which neither of which makes sense for Red Bull and the budgets they already have, to the F1 movie with Brad Pitt and Apex GP and a battle there, which made sense for about 5 seconds and then moved on. I just don't know how he sits in that seat next season. And as you say, Nate Saunders highlighted this. There was a stat But going into this weekend, Perez is a staggering 227 points behind Max, the largest margin between a world champion and their teammate in a season under the current point system. And we know the point system has changed over the time. But since we've had this, by far the biggest margin between a champion and their teammate. And the question is, who will replace him, right? I mean, the rumors all seem to say Liam. Right? Everywhere you turn, it's Liam. Yuki's sitting there thinking, hey, what have I done wrong? I've outqualified Liam 6-0. I've done a good job in this car. I've helped develop RB this season. He has a test coming up, I believe, in the Red Bull. I don't know why they're writing him off, but I have a question for you, Rob. A serious question. The Gas Man was on this team. He was Yuki's teammate for years. And then 2 years ago, he moved to Alpine. And the Gas Man has proven himself now in this dog of a car as a pretty good driver. And whatever they've done to improve it towards the end of the season, he's, obviously the Brazil podium. But beyond that, he's shown, 6th or 7th today? That's pretty impressive. Great quality from him. Do you think there's a sliding doors moment where if Gas Man stayed at AlphaTauri, RB, Minardi, Cash App, do you think there's a chance he'd get another shot in the Red Bull as Max's teammate? Or would he, if, like they showed him the door, you had your chance, it didn't work out?
Yeah, they're ruthless, I think. The only person that ever got the hint of a second chance was Danny Rick, and it if you don't perform instantly, that's it, you're toast. What Gasly would have done is he would have just sat in that AlphaTauri watching Perez never give up his seat, and then we would have got to this point now where I think they would still be looking at youth to go alongside it. So I think he would, because right now, to me, this just shows that Red Bull are a drivers' championship team, not a constructors' title team, because you've just lost the constructors' title. We've just seen a different team win it for the first time in 3 million years. If you want to fight back on that front again, you go and grab a driver who doesn't have a seat at the moment that can be a renowned number 2 wingman that can bring home the bacon and let Max do his thing, but consistently score points and probably podiums. And that man is Mr. Valtteri Bottas. Or you could have gone for K-Mag or anybody who's leaving. I don't know. I think they're going to go for Lawson. And I think, in all honesty, I think he's going to drown in that seat and be yet another one of the ones that the Red Bull machines takes in and spits out.
Wow.
I don't know.
I hate to say this. I think so too. I'm getting this vibe that that's kind of what's going to happen. Anyway, we can get into that in the offseason. But sorry, I just was curious. I do believe that they may have given him a chance. Pierre matured, and I think they might have given him another chance if he'd stuck around. But
do you think the Gas Max dynamic could ever have existed, though? Like, Gasly's not going to want to go there as a you have to go there knowing
right.
You are playing second fiddle. There is never going to be a chance of team orders. You're going to Max's team. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. If a team builds fully around a number 1 driver, the number 2 driver just needs to go in there eyes wide open. I'm not sure the Gas Man goes in there as a number 2.
That is a question for the offseason. Do you think most drivers would rather be number 1 at a midfield or backmarker team, or number 2 clearly at a top tier team?
Yeah, that is definitely. Let's put a pin in that and let's move on. So, what else did we have? We had the George and Max beef this week, which seemed to explode out of nothing. I mean,
wow.
Right, hear me out on this.
Yeah,
I think the media. Well, I know the media know what they're doing. They get a whiff of a potential story and they get in there and they stoke it and they ask.
Totally.
They ask questions in a particular style, trying to get a rise out of it. So we hear that there's been some beef in the steward's office and Max wasn't happy with the way that George basically went full guns blazing to throw Max under the bus to get the penalty done last week. Fine. But they came out, and I don't even know. I've got lost in all of this of the timeline as to who said it first. But they caught one of them coming out, and they've had a talk, and whoever it was, whether it was Max or George, has kind of said that the other one is, he's like, please, sir, he's telling tales on me. It kind of was that sort of angle. So they've run with that. They've run instantly to the other driver. Let's say it was Max that first said it. They've run to George and said, hey, George, Max said this. What do you think? Which is instantly putting the person into this kind of defensive position. So George fights back. They take George's comments back over to Max. Hey, Max, George is saying this now. And then the team principals get involved, and it was just comedy drama, but the media love it because it just does what they want, which is get eyeballs onto the sport leading up to the finale of the season. And neither of these two drivers got anything to do with the finale.
Right, exactly. Well, Max will try to play a role in it anyway as the race gets started. But yeah, it did. I think you're right. I think the media put the fuel to this fire. I think they saw some smoke and they're like, we can turn this into a blazing fire here. I will say this though, when they did the dinner that Valtteri paid for, when they did the dinner, at first Lando said we kept them separated and they were at different ends of the table, but then the rumors stories came out that they were like George and Max were seated near each other at some point, and then George moved to sit with Lewis, and who really knows what actually happened. We can ask Valtteri when he comes back on the pod.
Oh yeah, and Valtteri was obviously one of the drivers that was disappearing off the grid this year, but the way that somebody already disappeared that we didn't see this weekend was Ocon. I didn't like the way, I don't know if it's crossed wires here and Ocon did know or not know or what have you, but Ocon released his helmet to show his farewell, thank you for all the memories type helmet, which you don't do one of those helmets really if you know you're not racing. So I'd like to think it was crossed wires. The part of me just thinks Alpine have been like this. They've just been brutal. They've got rid of people. They've done various things. And yeah, they canned Ocon to give Duhan his debut, which I didn't like the way it came across that it happened. We don't know if it happened like that, but from the outside looking in, it didn't sit well with me.
Yeah, I agreed. And it was weird. I'll be honest, as they look at the constructors and you scroll down, the constructor finish, and you see where Alpine are, and spoiler alert, they're sixth, which is great. They won that midfield battle. It says Gasly and Doohan. And I'm like, really? I mean, because Esteban was there for 23 of the races making that happen.
So they're trying to just kind of erase him.
I don't know about that. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like the way it went down. Quick one, I won't drain this one too much, but I didn't know Bernie Ecclestone had such a car collection, and he won't for much longer. He is putting up his collection of 69 Formula One cars for sale. Just quickly hit some of these. So about half of them are Brabhams, and they haven't been seen in public for decades. The other half are a 51 Ferrari that Ascari drove for the first ever F1 victory, the fan car that Niki Lauda won the Swedish Grand Prix in '78, one of Sterling Moss's Vanwall for the first year of the Constructors' Championship, Mike Hawthorne's 1958 championship-winning Ferrari Dino, Schumacher's F2002. I mean, you just look down this and you're going, wow. Imagine owning one of those, let alone 69.
I can't. That is a tremendous collection. And it's interesting when you see car collections, but when you see race car collections, it's a little different, in my opinion. It's pretty neat. And whomever the broker or agent selling it is, I saw this whole thing with them. Turns out Matt Bishop, friend of the pod, his Diagonal Comms, is representing that broker or seller. So the whole world, it all just comes back together.
It all comes to the dirty side. That's where it all centers back to, right?
If you say so. So we heard, obviously, that the Cadillac/GM F1 team was approved recently, and then along the way, Mohammed Ben Sulayem says, oh, yeah, by the way, maybe we can get to a 12th team. And everyone starts scratching their head like, what? We went to battle and war for years to get the 11th, and then a week after that, you're saying there could be a 12th. And so
I think it's the age-old adage of you wait ages for a bus to turn up and then two come along at once.
Yeah, apparently. We'll see 24 drivers on the grid, and Kevin Magnussen will have bumped into all of them. But we did find out the new Cadillac team, the team principal will be former Marussia sporting director Graham Loudon, who I'd never heard of. So, yeah. And then, speaking of expansion, not just the grid, but Max Verstappen and his girlfriend Kelly Piquet announced they're going to have a kid. And for some reason, no one has picked up on the joke of calling it Min Verstappen. Because Max and Min, I mean, big and little, it's perfect.
We move on.
And so, speaking of the Dutch, Zandvoort is not going to be on the calendar beyond 26. The organizers pulled themselves off, said we'll do next year. And 26, and then we're done. We're not making any money doing this. And I'm like, what?
I know. I'd love to know.
Are you doing it wrong?
The nerdy part of me would like to know the financials behind this, because they say they're not financially viable despite all these sold-out races while Max is at his peak. So if you're looking beyond and all these rumours that Max won't stay around beyond 26 because he's got no interest in the new regs, I mean, that's going to be a huge risk. If you think, well, we don't make money when we sell out with all the Maximania going on, and if he's not there anymore and we can't guarantee a sellout, we're definitely not going to make any money. But I know they pay a lot to F1
to be on the calendar.
Be on the calendar. obviously you would have thought that with everything that goes around it, they make way more than the cost, but obviously they don't. And I
You must
don't
have to host
understand
enough
it.
other races throughout the year of other
Yeah.
categories that maybe they don't. I would, if I had all the money in the world, I would totally show up for a race there. It's not my favorite track, but I love the fact that it's right on the beach, like right across from the beach
Yeah.
area there. I would love to ride my bike to the track like they show all the people doing. I'd love to sit inside. Was it 3 or 4? The banked crazy little turn on the inside.
Yeah.
I'd love to sit near there, watch that unfold. It would be awesome. It would just be so cool. Such a unique place to go watch a race, and especially while Max is at the top of his game, I'd love to see that in person. But
Well,
I don't have
we've
all
got
the
2
money in
years
the world.
I was going to say we've got 2 years to find our angel investor and get some sponsorship and go to Zandvoort before it's not on the track anymore. But we'd have a lot longer to go to China if we wanted to go there,
Yeah,
because that's
speaking
been
of track
extended
news.
out till that's been extended out to 2030. It's an okay track. I can't remember.
I like it
our
more than
review
you.
of it.
I like that
That's
back
right.
straight coming up
Yeah,
before
yeah,
the
yeah.
pit straight is so close, and it just kind of allows for changes of order right before the end of the start-finish line for whatever reason. Finish the race or however things happen. I do enjoy China, I think, more than you.
Yeah, I think that sounds true from when we did the race
Yeah.
review.
So then I'll be going to Shanghai as well if I had all the money in the world.
There we are.
And
Yeah,
you can stay at home and
I'll stay at home and watch. Yeah,
polish up your collection of mini cars.
K-Mag has secured his next venture. He is going to officially become a BMW M Works driver and will take the wheel of the BMW M Hybrid V8 next year. So K-Mag's already sorted out his future. And then to wrap up news and social, you've got one of stewards' statistics.
Well,
Wow,
Lee
this sounds exciting. So
It
come on,
is
hit me up.
exciting. Lee kind of put a little flame in the fire here from the Discord. So, by the way, it's the second or third Discord plug. So third. So join us on the Discord. So Lee sent a note out after Qatar where there was a lot of conversation on penalties. Rob and I were trading notes. I believe Vegas was the best race of the last 3 for on-track racing. And the only reason Qatar was interesting was all the penalties and all the investigations. And then obviously we had a late safety car and it kind of changed things up. But there were a lot of questions about the stewards' decisions and some of the timing. And so I'm going to mispronounce this person's name, but I've read them before on Race Week Recap. Jeppe Olesen?
Yeah, that works. Let's go for it.
The 2024 stewards statistics. So they literally rank everyone who's been a steward at a race, and obviously there are multiple stewards per race, so some of them overlap at different times. And they talk about when penalties are given, and they have penalties per investigation, no findings per investigation, and then types of penalties, grid penalties and time second penalties, and how many seconds per thing. And so I dug into this a little bit, and Johnny Herbert's been getting knocked a lot. As a former driver and a commentator, people have said he's terrible. So he actually has the second lowest investigation to penalty ratio. So meaning he has the lower amount of investigations than some of the other stewards, the most popular, frequently used stewards. Second lowest, after only the great Matthew Selly. Never heard of that person. And so, but when Johnny Herbert does investigate, he leads all stewards in time penalties. So he doesn't like to investigate that much. But when there is an investigation, if Herbert is a steward, you can pretty much count on a time penalty. And his time penalties are larger than others. But again, this year we've seen the emphasis on 10-second penalties that the drivers have asked for. So I don't know how much that skews it. But I would just say the first part is statistically proven that if Johnny Herbert's a steward and there is an investigation done, there's a higher chance of a time
But he's
time
also
penalty.
more likely to let things slide because he doesn't investigate as often.
Correct.
So you've got a higher
if
bar
they
to
go no
reach before-
investigation, correct. But if
Yeah,
it hits
yeah, okay.
investigation, you should watch for it.
So Johnny, if you hit the bar of Johnny getting interested in you, you're in trouble. But if you see Johnny on the list, you've got a lot more that you can kind of probably get away with.
You
Before,
just don't cross the line, because if you do,
until
you
the
get
Herbert
10
hammer
seconds.
comes down.
Yeah, exactly. All right, and with that, we're going to open quickly the video vault. Paul gave us a call this week. Paul gave Rob and I a call this week, and he referenced the fact that he loves the video vault. It's his favorite part. So,
I don't remember him saying that.
Oh, it was the
but
opposite. He said the opposite.
He definitely referenced the video vault. Let's just put it that way.
Oh, it was the opposite. So Nico Hulkenberg and Kevin Magnussen sit down for one last chat, one last time on the MoneyGram Haas F1 team, nearly 7 minutes. Yeah, K-Mag's quiet. I mean, He's not. He's a man of few words and pointy elbows on the racetrack. Nico is growing on me, like over the years, and I mean this in a positive way. I've never not liked him. I just sort of, it was vanilla. It was fine. It was a good base for things. He's really growing on me, and he was funny in this. So go ahead, check it out. Charles Leclerc claiming to be good at things for 4 minutes and 25 seconds on a channel I found called Football Memory, but memory spelled wrong. Like I said, it's just over 4 minutes. This is funny to me because I love Charles, but I have often talked about in his C-squared videos, he talks so much crap about how good he is to Carlos and against everybody. This is literally 4 minutes of him saying how great he is at stuff and then being wrong immediately. And so okay. if you're a Charles fan, like I am, you can go check that out. And then the last real video is Thank You, Lewis, on the Mercedes channel. 2 minutes. Yeah, it's okay. I mean, it was just a montage, very short and there were a lot of Lewis videos and tributes. We don't have to go crazy. I still don't understand why they put him on the grid at the end. He's not retiring. He's going to a different team.
Put a hold for that thought because,
And then the last video, which I have to highlight, is I work in technology, and someone sent me a webinar, and I'm not going to get into the details too much, but it was with this company called Arctic Wolf and CDW. And it was highlighting Red Bull, Oracle Red Bull Racing. And I wrote back, normally I'd pass, but I'll check this out because I'm an F1 fan. You got me. You had me at hello. I'll check this out. And I watched it. And I went for the hour and I did my thing. And the reason I did my thing is they were giving away 4 autographed Max Verstappen articles to people who were in the webinar. Now, as of the recording, I haven't gotten a note that I've won any of those 4 things. So I'm a little disappointed. But Max actually makes a cameo in the beginning of the webinar, and he's obviously pre-recorded. He's not live, but he's pre-recorded, and he talks about security and Arctic Wolf and all this, that, and the other. And I'm like, well, this is already worth the price of admission. I sent it to Rob. I go, look what I'm doing with my day. Otherwise, I was bored out of my mind with the rest of it. But the beginning was great. Rob, you all right?
Well, if they're listening, they're definitely taking you off the prize winner list now. It's like you just got
fine.
They were going to give it to you, and
if they don't appreciate my honesty, then I'm definitely not going to win. So with that, we'll close it up and move on to the race weekend.
Okay. We've probably got quite a lot to cover in Qualy in the race, so let's just quickly skip practice with just the main headlines, which was the 2 Leclercs on track together, because FP1 was full of rookies, reserve drivers. What's the phrase I'm looking for? It's just basically all the younguns that don't normally get to take part. So we had Arthur and Charles out on track together, which was nice. And then bigger stories that probably came out of it was 10-place penalty for Charles and 5 each for the Williams boys. And that really kind of put a dagger through the heart of any kind of World Championship spiciness, I think, really, really early on before we even got to Qualy, because it's like, it just would have been so great to have, the red and Papaya cars right at the front, duking it out for the entire race. And once we saw the 10-place penalty, we were like, yeah, okay, so this probably isn't going to be as exciting as we hoped it was going to be.
And we knew that if McLaren won, it would be all over. So you needed battling at the front. You don't need a guy starting 10 places back. And even if Charles takes pole, he's 11th. So that's not going to be helpful to have one car only at best going at him. But then we get to Qualy. And Rob, you're right. Qualy was great. I really enjoyed it. Q1, I was throwing things at the TV. Valtteri was P2 at the end of Q1. And I'm thinking, this was amazing. I mean, for everybody who may be newer to the dirty side, yes.
This is Valtteri Bottas, and you're listening to the dirty side of the track.
Yes, we've had Valtteri on. Do we ever talk about that? Not enough. And then, weirdly, in Q1, Checo goes over the line at turn 1, and they say, track limits, your lap's been deleted. He goes, you should check it out. I was pretty close. I think I was in, which is an emphatic thing for a driver to say. You can't see where the line is from the cockpit of the car. And so they're like, no, you were out. And then all of a sudden later, no, it's been reinstated. And I don't remember the number of times we've had a lap track limited, taken away, and then reinstated. It's not often. I mean, it happens, but it's not particularly often where the steward's like, oh, we looked for the 3rd time. The first 2 we thought you were out, canceled it. 3rd time we said okay. Really?
What I want to know is, so they put this new camera in, which is in a brilliant position to catch the track limits.
Right.
Are they just eyeballing it the first time in real time? And going, yeah, it looked out. And then if a driver
don't
moans
know.
about it, they actually do the freeze frame. Because once you do the freeze frame, I mean, wow, it was tight, but there was probably about a millimeter of front wheel rubber that just about hung onto the white line. So they've gone, actually, yeah, there isn't an obvious blue, because they put the blue stripe outside of the white line now, so it's really easy. It's like, you're right, there isn't actually a clear blue line between both wheels. So
Thank you for asking us to
reinstate
take
it.
a third look at it and actually use the
Yeah,
freeze. Why wouldn't they do that anyway?
I don't know. And then we had, I mean, I think Valtteri gets no luck, but to be honest, Lewis started the weekend off with zero luck
Oh
in
my
terms of all the things that could happen to you on your
Totally.
last quali for Mercedes. He's driving along, doing his own thing. K-Mag gets out of the way, so to not to impede him, and in the biggest sense of irony going, impedes him way worse than he could ever have done by just staying in front of him, because he sends a bollard torpedo under the... I mean, he literally torpedoes him. He fires a torpedo bollard across the road. It gets wedged under the front of Lewis's wing, and he can't improve his time, so he goes out. It was just he couldn't make it up.
I gotta use the Seb sound. I was waiting for you to stop.
I came like a torpedo.
Came like a torpedo. Oh my god! Yeah, so he was out. We lost Doohan, Colapinto, Lewis Hamilton in his last Mercedes race, Joe, and Alex. And so then we go to Q2, and Leclerc gets the track limits. And I'm thinking, well, let's see if this thing gets reinstated. And then they show the camera. No, he's out. I can see the blue on both sides.
I was going to say, you didn't need to freeze frame that one. They literally could just eyeball that one and go, yeah.
Yeah, we didn't need to slow that one down. That was, you were out, Charles. But Valtteri moves into Q3 as he was ninth. But we lost K-Mag, Charles, we already talked about that because of that track limits, Lance Stroll, Liam Lawson, and Yuki, although Yuki was above Liam. Just pointing that out again for all you RB lovers like me.
And essentially what that really does now is completely destroy any dream we had of Charles being up at the front to contest for a win, because now with his 10-place penalty, he's going to be last. In fact, they needed to insert some additional cards for him to actually start 24th.
Well, he started 19th, right? Didn't Franco end up with the prioritization of penalties be ending up further back? But yeah. Oh, man.
And then, Q3 was epic with lots of little mini stories going on. So we had Max looked like he was going to put it into a wall and just did almost like a no-look one-handed slide on the steering wheel, probably pointing out the window and getting the cameraman to catch this one, and then just kind of drifted around the corner, caught it, and still put himself on provisional pole. It was like, oh my gosh, not only did you have the reactions to save it, you kept it on the road, you didn't hit the wall, you still did it quick.
I think he was probably still on the gas. I mean, there's no way you don't lose any more time than he lost without being on the gas. And for anyone who's ever gone, driving regular road cars or race cars for fun, as I've done a couple times, just like track days, if you really get the slide going right and you look out the driver's side window, then you're doing it right. And that's what he was doing. He was looking out the driver's side window as he's crossing the start-finish line. I could almost hear him going, yeehaw!
And then for a little bit longer than I expected, and I started to believe maybe, Hulk goes and puts it on pole.
Oh my God.
And a couple of guys cross the line and don't go past him. I'm like, whoa. So Max didn't improve his time. No, George didn't go past him. I'm like, what's going on here? We can't have the Hulk on pole. But eventually the McLaren rocket ships came round and blew that dream away, and Carlos did the same as well. But yeah, man, did we have awesome. And then Piastri got lap time deleted, but then given back again because they decided to eyeball it the second time. It was just epic. So we had
2 reinstatements in the same quali, not the same session, but the same quali. That's insane.
I know. So we ended up with Norris on pole from Piastri, dream quali result for McLaren. Sainz kind of trying to keep some Ferrari hope alive in third. The Hulk in fourth, but would eventually get a 3-place penalty. And when I saw the FIA official document thing come through, somebody shared it online, and then you see all the comments coming in going, oh, this is not fair. When so-and-so does it, they don't get penalised. This isn't right, blah, blah. Anybody that's reacting like that didn't read the document, because in the document, it said the driver, so obviously Hulk, admitted that the only way that he could get out of the pit lane in time to put a second lap in, which was the one that almost got him pole, was to overtake in the pit lane. I think he just basically winged it and just hoped nobody would notice. So once they did catch him, apparently he didn't even refute it in the stewards'
Which, by the way, is
office.
the second time this season he's hoped no one noticed something. Like, he's in Brazil,
When he got
beached,
pushed.
and all the marshals are pushing his car. He's like, nothing to see here. Look away. Nothing to see.
So he would drop down, which means Max and Pierre and George moved up. Alonso was in 8th. Valtteri and ninth and Perez in 10th, which just to give you a little snapshot, and I know it's one race, one quali, it doesn't really matter, but just for the hell of it, that means in the race for the RB seat, we had Valtteri ahead of Sergio, ahead of Lawson, ahead of Yuki, ahead of Lawson. So, just saying.
From your mouth to helmet Marco's ears. Oh,
so there we
went
were.
to the race. Oh, the race was fascinating in the beginning because it felt like we were watching bumper cars at one point. It felt just like everybody was out there having a good time, kind of running into each other. And I don't know, it got boring after that. I mean, we'll get into it all here as we take it apart, but I don't know. It wasn't what I've said this before. I've said this about Abu Dhabi before. It's like you're leaving your lover at the train station and you won't see them for months and they just rip a little toot as they leave. And that's what Abu Dhabi is every friggin' year.
The episode last year, I went and looked at it and we called it the Abu Dhabi GP.
What are we going to use this year?
And I don't think it's done anything to redeem itself. But let's at least get through what was kind of exciting at the beginning. So we had Max. Oh, Max, what are you doing? You've got no championship on the line. You're not involved in anything as this whatsoever, but you're going to try and throw it up the inside of Oscar regardless. And the two of them went into synchronized dancing to span on opposite sides of a relieved collar signs that just sort of shut his eyes and went for the gap. It just has to be shut your eyes and pray at that point, right? Because you're too late to do anything if the gap isn't big enough for a car. I mean, because he can't go left, and he can't go left, and he can't go right because there's a Max to his left, there's a Oscar to his right, and there's a gap opening up. So you just
and a bunch of smoke, and it's the old Days of Thunder thing. You drive where the accident should be gone by the time you get there, and hope it happens for you. And then as soon as we see this happen, and we're all trying to figure out what just happened, who's involved, and is that Oscar? Oh my God! And the championship battle, and then they get to the 2 corners later, and then Valtteri goes up the inside. And he has space, and then he doesn't, and him and Checo come together.
I think they said it was K-Mag. K-Mag came flying up the inside and squeezed Valtteri. Valtteri's got nowhere to go, so moves over and tags Perez. And this guy, I swear, we've said it many, many times, he must have done something to somebody somewhere who has got a voodoo doll of Valtteri because he just gets no luck. He goes and has a quali like that.
Right. In his last race at Sauber, potentially on the grid.
Last race at Sauber, a car that finally looks like it's got points-worthy speed after last week's one where they finished 9th and 11th.
Battle for points-worthy speed.
At least battle for points, right? And I saw a piece of green. It's obvious when something flies off a Sauber because it's just neon. And you're like, oh my God, he's got damage, hasn't he? And he drops way back. Then we get... what did we get? The VSC for Checo? Was that when
Checo continued, and then he retired. He had to retire it later. He continued on for a bit, and then we get the VSC for Checo, neutralized it, and they get the car off. And while this is happening, again, this was the fun, exciting part of the race. Charles is making some great decisions. He's doing what Charles has done a lot this season, where he can find a little gap. He can pops down the inside when the leaders are battling, but instead he goes around the outside and he makes up 10 spots on the opening lap.
You know what Charles did? Charles held the accelerator down on the 2 in the 3, 2, 1 countdown and got the Mario Kart Turbo off the start. I mean, it was brilliant. It was when they showed the onboard, it just looked like all the other cars were in slow motion, like he'd turned the difficulty setting down.
And the sound coming out of his car was familiar. It was this.
It was just epic. And then we had Oscar trying too hard, maybe to get back into it, and just ran into the back of Colapinto, wasn't it? It was just,
and he got a 10-second penalty. Max got a 10-second penalty. No one got a penalty on the Valtteri, Bottas, and K-Mag and Checo situation. So that was racing incident, or as Charles likes to say, just an incident. and so they let that one fly. But Oscar got a deserved 10-second penalty. He just went right into the back of Colapinto, and I know you don't take the results into the action, but when you get a puncture and you have to pit, I mean, that's a 25-second penalty for Franco, in addition to his slow lap getting to the pit. So, yeah.
Yeah, and then penalties were flying around. So Max did get. I don't know if did we already say Max got his 10?
Yep.
Oh, sorry, I wasn't listening to you.
That's right.
George got stuck behind Gasman
forever
and forever, and Lando just started disappearing off into the future. It was just 3-4 seconds, just kind of starting to pull it out, and it was at this point where I'm like, this is going to need some external influence to spice this up because McLaren are just fast. They are not catching. They're not catching him. But yeah, Bottas came in 21 seconds in the pits for the new wing, but it was just hurting at this point, just watching the inevitable that this wasn't going to be Valtteri's day.
Yeah.
Well, meanwhile, Charles was on an absolute flyer. I think where is he? By about lap 10, he's up to like 7th or what have you, or 6th, something like that.
Yeah, and we already talked about Oscar's penalty, which came out. At this point, Pierre is still 3rd, which was wild. I mean, again, George is occasionally coming up for a challenge, but more often than not, just hanging out about 2.5 seconds behind. Really helping Alpine in the Constructor Championship, or as I typed in the notes, Constrictor. And then Rob says, like the snake. This is the part where it got boring because we started making jokes in the notes. So at this point, at lap 10, we enter a very long lull. Now, yes, we had pit stops occurring, so that was a little bit more interesting as we saw. And there were some passes. Charles got Fernando here. He was cruising up to the Hulk. Haas decides to take a pit stop for Kevin Magnussen, and they're like, you know what? It's your potentially last pit stop. We're going to make sure the right rear takes an hour and a half to come off, just so we have a chance to say goodbye live during the race. Like, they were coming out shaking his hand during the race as they're trying to get the right rear off. Speaking of people with pit stop problems, I know I'm going out of order. Can we just do this real fast? The RB team didn't even attempt to try to get that front left on Liam's car tightened. Did you see that rerun later on? Like, they drop the car, he starts to go, he stops, and at this point, the jack person on the front left is waving him on. They never touched it. It was never touched with the jack. You got to, if he stops, don't you try to get it back on?
I don't know. And when they said it was loose, when they showed the slow-mo afterwards and it was causing sparks, it had to have been at least some way tightened. There's no way he keeps that speed around an entire lap without the wheel just flying off.
I don't know.
It had to have a nut of some degree with some amount of tightening going on, because just the lateral load, I would have thought, going left or right round a corner, if that's not got a wheel nut on, that's just going free into
and then
the
what they do, they
distance.
gave him a 10-second stop go on that because of that unsafe release, I'm fairly certain. So anyway, I know we've gone out of order. I always love it when they send cars out with things on or not. Like when Alex was at Baku and they had the fan still in the car, and the Williams team still had the fan in the car. I'm like, whoops a daisy.
Yeah.
And this time they didn't tighten the tire. I'm like, all right, at RB. Anyway.
Yeah, and then it all just kind of meandered into nothing. We had one moment where Sainz came in and did an absolute cracking stop, 2.2 seconds, which then meant Lando had to respond. They called him box the very next lap. So this had to be a great stop. So you don't get much more pressure than this moment now, because if they screw the pooch and have a long stop, then Sainz gets track position and maybe something else happens. But you've got to be, fair play to McLaren. Absolutely nailed it. See your 2.2 second stop? We'll do a 2 second stop. 2 seconds dead. Nailed it. Out goes Lando. The only thing that slightly happened was, because of the undercut effect, now Sainz could see the back of the McLaren. He came out 1.6 seconds behind him,
right.
And I think he got a little bit overexcited and tried to charge him down there and then, and just nuked his tyres, because that was the closest he was ever going to be for the rest of the race.
We go to lap 30. Max serves his penalty on his pit stop, his 10-second penalty, and as he pulls away, he goes... They said, that was a good stop considering the 10-second penalty. Max goes, 10 seconds, make it 20 next time, stupid idiots. Now, Max, if you go look at the steward statistics that I just talked about before the video vault, you'll see who you should be driving like that when they're in the steward's room. And so if you've had Johnny Herbert in there, if that goes to an investigation, you're going to get more seconds.
Yeah, exactly. And then the bit that just completely drove a dagger through the heart of everything was seeing... Valtteri limping around with broken front suspension and a tire hanging off, and you're just like, oh no. And at first you thought, well, he's had bad luck. Someone run into him. Nah, this one's on Valtteri. Tires weren't up to temperature. He goes to brake into a corner. The brakes say no thanks, or the tires say no thanks. Huge lockup, white smoke everywhere, and unfortunate K-Mag for once. By the way, unless it was payback for the first corner where he squeezed him into Perez, who knows?
Maybe.
But whatever happened, Valtteri had one last bowling ball up his sleeve and took K-Mag out. I thought there was maybe going to be a safety car here. I thought maybe Valtteri might have delivered us some epic excitement for the end of the race.
There was debris on track, and people were like,
no,
Lewis.
It all kind of flew off.
I know it did. Lewis was calling for the safety car because he hadn't.
Of course he was.
Yeah,
he's like, of course he was.
Bono says I got a chance at something here, so let's see if we can make this happen. But yeah, and at this point, we had Checo, Franco, and Valtteri retire, none of whom have a seat for next year. And I'm thinking, are we relegating everyone who doesn't have a seat for next year to the retiree bin? Because I'm just kind of waiting to see. And yes, I know Checo has a seat officially. I'm not saying that in 2025 he has a contract, but I don't understand how he'll be in that chair for more than a week.
And then all the overtakes that are happening at this point, pretty much, and a lot of the ones that had been happening all race were all DRS related. And as I look back at it, even the exciting ones, the drivers caught on midway through the race as to what was going on. The exciting battles weren't really battles, they were DRS artificial. So if you overtook in the first DRS zone, if the driver behind could stay close enough, they could probably get you back because the DRS is so powerful here. They just hang out in your DRS and then get you back again. We saw so many positional swaps where, oh, someone's overtaken somebody. Oh, no, they got them straight back again. And then George, at some point, I didn't even write the note down, but as we started looking at it, from about midway onwards, they all started going, I ain't going to overtake in the first one. I'm going to actively back out of an overtake and take you on the second one because then you won't be able to get me back. And I thought, that is a complete depiction of where DRS has gone wrong, where a driver is actively refusing to overtake because they want to overtake them the next time because they know it will be so easy.
Right,
but they don't want to give the DRS back to the other guy. So it's like, yeah, okay, that's...
We saw Pierre trying to copy that on Yuki, and then Yuki trying to copy that on Pierre. By the way, I enjoy #Pukey coming back together on track, two buddies. Like I say, I think if Pierre had stayed, maybe Red Bull gave him another shot at that second seat, but who knows? Oscar and Yuki then going back and forth, and they did your favorite move, the DRS swapperoo, and just back and then back. Lewis, though, at this point is in I don't want to call it a rocket ship, let's not overdo it, was in a car that had good tires and was performing better, and he was kind of past the gas man. He's working his way up, and now he's about 12 seconds behind George with about 10 laps to go. And the question is, can he get George? And so literally, for me, because you could kind of see things being set in stone, you saw that Lando's pulling away so far out front. And if he wins, it doesn't matter where Oscar is, and it doesn't matter what the Ferraris do. McLaren's the champion. And so it's looking like that's a certainty unless something crazy happens. At this point, with Pierre driving like he's driving, you need the Haas boys to pull something out of their sleeve to make it happen for 6, and it's not going to happen. So there's really little change to anything at the last 10 laps. So the race that had been boring becomes even more boring. But thankfully, the only thing I was watching was Mercedes. Will Lewis catch George? And because of the TV direction and the rules they have, right as Lewis gets close to George, they are contractually obligated to cut to the race winner, the Constructors Champion, Lando Norris, from a 10-mile-away helicopter shot. I couldn't even tell where he was on the track. And then the fireworks start, and I'm in this little box in the top left corner trying to see what happened. And they cut back to Lewis, and there's no one in front of him. So he obviously got George. Thanks.
The only bit of excitement, and I get it, right? McLaren fans, we are not begrudging your excitement.
Yeah,
it must have been a lap of absolute shredded nerves, thinking, will the gods shine on us? Will Lando pick up a puncher off that debris that no one cleared away? You know, I get why they had to go back and show McLaren win it. It's just, it was so boring, and the only thing that was about to happen was, and this was not really big per se, but there was a stat floating around that
same amount of points scored as teammates.
Same amount of points as teammates for Mercedes. So
sorry, just to be clear, George and Lewis have scored the same amount of points in the time they've been teammates at Mercedes. We don't have SAP stats. We're recording this right after the race, so Rob nailed it. So that was the exciting part, right?
Yeah, so Hamilton takes him so that he leaves Mercedes as the numero uno between the pair of them. So when we didn't get to see it.
We
So,
didn't see it.
you know, there was some good parts. You know, I had to bury my Ferrari fanboy deep down and go, do you know what? Well played, McLaren. First title since '98. That's amazing. It's just amazing that somebody other than Red Bull or Mercedes have won it in this kind of modern era. So that was fantastic. I loved Zach Brown when they showed him. I just felt that if someone actually took a pin and slightly touched it to him, he would literally explode. He was just like just fully inflated at this point with excitement and adrenaline. It was amazing to see. And then you picked up the mechanics. You loved the mechanics touch.
I
That was
did.
great
When
as
they
well.
showed the McLaren mechanics, and I'm sitting here thinking, I'm literally yelling at the TV. I'm so excited for McLaren. I'm yelling,
Papaya rules.
Papaya rules. This is great. This is, well deserved. We've watched Lando and where that team's been, with Danny Rick as a teammate and Carlos as a teammate, and at times they weren't really good at all. And at the beginning of 23, when they were not racing for anything, as Lando would say later about other cars.
Not racing for anything.
And so they weren't. They were last. And here they are, Constructors Champions, since 98. This is fantastic. And as they're showing the mechanics celebrating, I'm like, wait, what? And I see these red shirts, and the Ferrari mechanics are down there hugging them, congratulating them.
It was
and
nice.
that right there, that's F1. That's just what makes the sport so cool, is the support, love, and appreciation people have within it. That's the reason we get half the guests we get, because they're amazingly nice people. And so I just I loved seeing that. I didn't know why all of a sudden Lewis was pulling onto the main pit straight, though, as they cut away from that. And then he starts doing donuts, and I'm like, wait, hang on. I go, he's not retiring, right? He's on the grid next year.
It's marketing nonsense. It just really is. It's just like they're just trying to cash in on the Lewis Mercedes story, and it's point. What, like you say, he's not retiring.
He's not retiring.
He's not retiring. He'll be on the grid next year, just in a different coloured car. Why did he get to do donuts?
I don't know. So Carlos was on the grid because he finished second. Where were his donuts? He's moving to Williams. I wanted to see every driver who's going to a new team had to go out there and where's Esteban? They didn't bring him out of mothballs and put him out there in a Haas to do some turns. Hulkenberg didn't get a chance to go out there and do some donuts. He goes, I'm going to be in a Sauber next year. Where were his donuts? And so I get it when like you're in China and they bring Joe out and they put a little thing out there for Joe and the fans go crazy. I get that. I really do. I don't get this.
That's a nice touch.
I don't get this.
Yeah,
and I love Lewis. I'm a Lewis fan. I don't understand at all why. Like, you celebrate his time at Mercedes, not his time at F1. He's still here.
Yeah, exactly. It's like when Seb retired, do something big for that. Right. When Lewis retires, do something big for that. Absolutely. But this one was just a bit odd. What else was I just going to quickly say on that one? Now a thought came through my head. Oh no,
I'm sorry.
Cool down room. The cool down room. One of the most awkward moments when MBS came in and draped himself over Lando and had his arm around him and trying to be part of the scene, and all the drivers kind of stood there like, it was just awkward. It was like, that guy needs to be out of the sport pretty quick, I think.
Yeah, I can do
it's
without.
Not going to
happen. The FIA doesn't need to be in that cool down room at all.
No, agree.
So, again, congratulations to Lando and to McLaren and to Oscar. They obviously don't win the Constructors without Oscar being a great driver next to Lando. I wouldn't call him a second because I think Lando's the first, but I think Oscar wants to be a first as well, and we'll see what happens next year.
So you won't call Oscar a second, but Lando's the first?
I'm saying they got two number ones is what I'm saying. It's just one of them's better than the other at this point. But yeah, Lando wins. Epic drive. Great job by everybody on a nervous day. He really did an amazing drive. Carlos, Charles brought Ferrari home 2-3. I don't know how the hell Charles made it from 19 to 3. I mean, we know how, but it's just crazy.
And just imagine if we hadn't had that 10-spot penalty, what we could have had as an epic shootout. I know McLaren fans wouldn't want an epic shootout. They want exactly the way it went, which was a cruise fest for Lando all the way to the checkered flag. And I don't begrudge them that at all, but just from having something on the line would have been better. But Lando, he's been under pressure before when he's been on pole and not converted it even to lead the first lap. And today, beginning to end, absolutely nailed it. Never even looked like he was in trouble. So, like you say, great drive there.
Yeah.
Lewis
and
but
then
my
George.
overall line was rubbish race after the initial spice. There it is in one sentence.
I agree. I couldn't say it better than that. I totally agree. And like I said, in the last 3 races, the best on-track racing has been Vegas by a mile, which I don't think anyone would have thought as you look at this. But I mean, that really 2 letdowns. Yes, Qatar was interesting because of the penalties and the situations. Yes, Abu Dhabi was interesting for the first 10 laps because of the crashes and the battles. But the overtakes at both Qatar and Abu Dhabi were just snooze fest. And like you say, they were just the only ones we had at Abu Dhabi now are just to give it back on the next section of DRS. So
Yeah, they got to look at that because it's just not. I know they'll count the stats as overtakes, but they're just. I'm not going to go on a Rob's rant about DRS. I'm going to refuse. It's the end of the season. I'm not going to go out on the low note of ranting around DRS. So, should we take a little listen and see the final phone in from the man, the myth, the legend that is Pitlane Paul? Do you want
let's do it.
Play the music and then we'll roll right in.
Hey now, looking out over the, I would say, palm of Abu Dhabi. Is that what you call these things? I don't know. Season done. I don't know. It feels. I mean, I've got emotions. Obviously, I know Valtteri says we're not done. So we're not done. I actually honestly believe we're not done. I can touch on that in a later episode. Well, let's sum up this weekend because this is why I'm here. I mean, obviously started with George and Max giving each other a little bit. Do I agree? Do I not agree? Do I actually have an opinion? I don't. I mean, look, I guess George just needs to, I always say, man up a little bit. I know Max is a bit spiky and a bit fiery, but that's life. Onwards from that, I mean, it was quite entertaining, wasn't it? I mean, it was actually quite funny. Then the race weekend, Friday there. You know my views on Friday. After all these years, that won't change. Qualifying, I mean, obviously, Lewis was a massive shock. Q1 and Valtteri being P2 was probably even more of a shock. The car showed some performance finally after all these months of turmoil. Q2, yeah, I won't lie, I don't know, huge. I don't think it was any huge. I mean, Leclerc going out, I guess, to track limits was one. I mean, he had a penalty anyway. I mean, I can't say no huge shocks because I guess Lewis and Leclerc going out were pretty big. Then Qualy 3, we got through to a Qualy 3. It was quite unusual for us. Didn't really know what to do. We were sort of looking at each other like, well, what do we do here? Then we ended at P9. I think they sent us slightly out at the wrong time. We were sort of in front of the pack, which I think was protecting more than anything. It's one of those decisions. If there's a yellow flag and everyone's lap's ruined, you're a genius. If there's not, then you're just going to jump backwards. But, I mean, to be realistic, I'm not going to complain at P9, so I'm going to be happy with that. McLaren looked like they had a massive grip on the championship. I mean, Leclerc was right down. Sainz was in the top 3. But, I mean, you look at McLaren at that point, and there's no way they can put themselves in any danger of not winning the championship. And then we roll on to Sunday. Obviously, an emotional day for a lot of drivers. It's a really strange weekend because, and again, something I don't want to dwell on now, but I'm going to go on to in a later thing. Because there's a weird mood about a weekend like this because you know that some people are not coming back. You know that because it's obvious, and you know the situation. You're not stupid. You know what's going on. For us, it was a bit like we don't think we're done. We think we're coming back. We are, we're going to be around next year in some way or form. I mean, that will be announced soon, but it's no spoiler. Obviously, this Mercedes rumours could potentially be true. So I see us being around sort of next year. How that looks, I don't know. Again, that's for a later episode. So the likes of like Magnussen, now even Magnussen, there's rumours he's going to have like some sort of role with Haas next year where he'll be around. So yes, not racing, but being around. And then one of the guys you think isn't going to be around is Perez, who no one's talking about not being around because he's not officially not around yet. So as you can imagine, it was quite an unusual situation. There's loads to focus on Lewis being the last race for Mercedes, but I mean he's going to be around still. He's just going to be driving a red car, which is nice. So it was for me, I found it quite a strange old day of things. The race, lap one, geez, I mean, I don't know. Verstappen and Piastri, yeah, okay, whatever. You know, it's. I mean, I look at that. It's a turn one. It's one of them things. Valtteri then decided he was going to have an attack on Perez to pretty much ruin his race, and and obviously then, I don't know. For me, the race was sort of like settled into what they normally do. This sort of like lull. No safety cars again as a VSC. I was thinking a race is defined, if there's a safety car. I'm not going to touch too much on other things from our team side. I guess I'm going to do that in a later thing. I bet you can't wait for this latest episode. I think I'm sort of selling this one up. You might not even have me on. I'm probably on the scrap pile after this weekend. But yeah, look. Then obviously Valtteri on Magnussen. I don't know exactly what happened, but it didn't look good, so let's be fair, but they were both fine afterwards. I think that one incident summed up the entire season for us. I think if we're realistic, that was pretty much a great marker of how our year has gone. It was a crash. So even though we were devastated to end like that, we really were. It wasn't, it wasn't a good feeling. We thought we had a good, honest chance of points. And again, it's just things that go against you. And again, Valtteri getting a 10-second penalty for Perez. I haven't seen it back fully, so I'm not gonna jump on anything. I just think 10-second penalties for. And again, I'm not seeing it, so I'm not going to make a comment on it because I'm going to say it's unfair. But I haven't actually seen it, so I can't judge if it's unfair or not unfair. I just look at these 10-second penalties and think, are they too harsh? Because in this sport, in a pit stop, if you're taking a 5-second penalty in a pit stop, it's probably more like a 6-7 second penalty. By the time it's such an unnatural thing for the pit crew to have to do in terms of not touching the car and suddenly engaging the car. So I don't know. And obviously then a 10-second penalty therefore becomes 11 or 12 seconds plus your pit stop. So I don't know. But again, I'm not going to sulk about that. What I'm going to celebrate is the end of a great season. And I am going to say, just on McLaren, boy, oh boy, were they, I know a few of the guys down there, and I know they were a little bit twitchy bum time the last few laps of that race. Lando, anything could have happened to him. I thought Leclerc was fantastic today. I think he was absolutely superb. And as much as I might doubt these guys, sometimes you can't knock that. So amazing for McLaren. I've got a few friends at McLaren. I can tell you now the scene in their garage after the race is one which I would want any team to do, any team to go and enjoy. It's such a magical thing. I don't think I think I've said this before to you guys. I don't think the Constructors Championship gets the credit it deserves amongst fans for how much that actually does mean to a team. So incredible for McLaren. I'm so happy with them. But I am going to leave us now. I'm over 7 minutes. I appreciate I'm taking your time. I am going to leave us just on Lewis. I thought he was probably arguably driver of the day. And I'm not just saying that because I'm patriotic towards Lewis or I'm about to go to his party. But what a drive. What a performance to get Russell as well. And it was almost poetic. It's such a shame he couldn't get a podium. I wasn't a massive fan of him going on driving on the start finish straight afterwards. Not his decision. That's just what F1 told him to do. He's not leaving the sport. He's just going to another team, And after a long time at that team, it does deserve recognition. But I don't know. I'm not going to look at the negatives. I'm going to look at the positives. The positives are I go home this time tomorrow. By the time I'm recording this, I am going to be at home. I cannot wait. I cannot wait to get away from this sport for a few weeks' time. And I am going to come on with you guys. That's a promise, a pinky promise I made. And we will discuss it a little bit further, but I won't lie to you, probably for the next week, I do not want to hear an engine. I've loved doing these for you guys. I'm not going to say this is the end. Who knows what's next? Catch you later.
Well, thank you as always, Paul. It's a shame that we're not going to probably have the every week report from the track next year. I mean, if rumors are true, we haven't even spoken to Paul about this, but if rumors are true and Valtteri goes to be the reserve driver for Mercedes, reserve drivers don't go to every race. Which, if Paul still ends up working for Valtteri, I guess he won't either. But we still want you on the pod every week, even if you're doing it from your house.
Definitely.
100%. You've been absolutely epic to us over these 3 seasons. So we fully expect to renew your contract into season 4. Right, should we do our final
his contract?
Renewing his contract.
If anything, this would never have existed without Paul.
Hey now! Hey now! Hey now!
That was Paul robbing me in Canada a year ago. Oh, sorry. So, yes, but it was 20.
Yeah,
whatever, 3. Right?
23, yeah, you're right. Sorry.
So anyway, Paul,
ago.
you're always welcome, brother. But let's do King of the Pits in the pits and wrap this
For
up.
one last time this year.
Rob, you want to start with the pits or the King of the Pits?
Let's start with the pits and
then
finish on a high note.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good call.
You're the pits.
Oh, I hadn't thought of this.
I kind of want to give it to Abu Dhabi track.
Abu Dhabi.
Because it's just now served up nothing burgers since Michael Massey decided to make things exciting. Now, looking back, that's why he did it. He's so bored with the racing. He's just kind of like, oh my God, let's do something.
You think he had a direct line to Latifi? He's like, 10 laps ago, 8 laps ago, he's like, challenge everybody now, Latifi.
Am I allowed to give it to a fictional entity?
Sure.
I want to give it to the F1 racing gods for not allowing Valtteri last week or this week from scoring points for the first time when the car actually looked in the right position. If the guy gets any luck, it's bad luck all the time. It just first corner collision again, not his fault again. It's just man. So F1 racing gods. They're my the pits this week.
I mean, this is weird, right? Because every week I've had an opinion or two on who should be the pits. Sometimes it's close to a tie, and I have to award it to somebody for being the pits. But I can't give it to Checo this week. He didn't qualify great, but he didn't do anything wrong. He was 10th, and he got in the wrong place at the wrong time. I can't give it to Colapinto. I mean, he got ran into. I can't give it to Valtteri because, again, got squeezed and then just things didn't go his way. Liam was last on track, but he didn't even finish. He was last. He classified 17th because it was the last lap. I can't give it to Liam. He's not the one who puts the tires on that car. And then you're into Magnussen. And Magnussen just kept boxing for softs every 5 minutes at the end of the race. He's like, 2 laps done, more softs? Let's use all the softs. And he got the fastest lap. Jack Doohan is a rookie. Would you expected more from him in a not great Alpine, even though Pierre made it look good? And so at this point, you're up to the Lance Strolls, who did nothing wrong, and Joe. So I look at the bottom, and I got nobody. So I'm going to give it to someone maybe a little controversial. I'm giving it to Max.
Oh.
Max wasn't fighting for anything. He'd won the championship a couple weeks ago. Red Bull couldn't finish any higher than 3rd. They weren't going to get caught for 4th by Mercedes. He had enough space. He slid into Oscar, and he could have messed up the Constructors Championship for McLaren. At some points, you ever hear the Martin Brundle and Crofty, they'll say, well, they know that a race isn't against that person. Like when someone lets someone by. They've never said that about Max. Max's race is with anybody near him at all times. It could be a blue marker, and he's going to put a move on him. I love Max. I think he's great to watch. I think he's great for the sport. I think he's an all-time generational talent and one of the Mount Rushmore of drivers. But I'm sorry. At that point, don't stick your nose into the constructors' battle. So I'm giving it to Max.
And then probably also for his little childish, give me 20 seconds.
Yeah, stupid idiots.
And not admitting that it was, I think Nate put a tweet out that said, has Max ever admitted ever that an accident was his fault? Sometimes you just got to have the humility to kind of go, that one's on me. But...
So yeah, I'll say Max, even though
Okay.
I'll probably be really unpopular. But with that, let's talk about the positive sides of the race with the king of the pits.
You're the king of the pit.
All right. Robert, who do you have as your king of the pits this week?
Huge honourable mention goes to Charles Leclerc for an
Yes.
epic drive from where he started to where he finished. To get on the podium from where he started, that first lap was just stellar. It was just absolutely brilliant. But, king of the pits has to be the entire McLaren team.
Yeah.
And they executed a race weekend perfectly. 1-2 in Qualy was just heaped the pressure on Ferrari. Kept their cool when Piastri got spun around and was at the back. Even he recovered to score points after getting too feisty and hitting Colapinto. So Lando could have easily buckled at that point. People keep calling his kind of mentality into question. You're out front now with two Ferraris behind you. Any misstep here, and you're probably handing the title to Ferrari. I think we didn't hear all the radio messages. I imagine there were many that just the team just coaching Lando through it, and just brilliant, just a brilliantly executed race weekend by McLaren. They didn't buckle, and they got their well-deserved WCC. So yeah. McLaren for me.
Totally agree. I think McLaren, like I said, you remember last year, 23 Austria, I think it was, when they brought Lando's first set of upgrades, and everyone's like, whoa, hold on a minute. And then they brought Oscars, and then they kept developing that car. They didn't have any downgrades, like Aston Martin continually brings year over year. I'm sorry, Aston Martin, but I've never seen a team go backwards every season after the season starts, as you've done. So, yeah, I agree with McLaren and Lando. Great drive. I agree with Charles. 19-3 is pretty darn impressive. I would actually like to put a third step on the podium of discussion for King of the Pits with the gas
So
man.
we got... Okay,
Yeah.
so you got McLaren on the top step, Charles on the second step.
Yeah,
and
I've
you
made
go
my
the
own
gas man
podium
up.
for King of the Pits, and I'm putting the
Okay.
gas man up there. He's driving like he's having fun again. And to see him do that, he's one of those drivers where he's not going to do something dumb. He's not going to run into you for no reason. He's not going to go for a move that doesn't exist. And he's taken a car which at the beginning of the season was atrocious. And they've worked on it. Kudos to Alpine. They've had tons of turnover. They've had tons of people leave. And somehow Pierre is still out there putting in performances. We thought Brazil was a one-off because of, and obviously it was because of the rain. And Alpine stinks. They belong back at the back. No, Alpine just finished 6th in the Constructors. 6th. If you told me that when the season started, I never would have believed it. That's wild to me. And so just to close this, I agree with you, McLaren. They finished first. I believe they finished with 666 points, which is the sign of the devil. So Zach Brown made a deal with the devil for this, followed by Ferrari, Red Bull, Mercedes, all had, a lot of points. And then a humongous delta to Aston Martin with 94 points. I think, Fernando was in the points this week, but it's been a rare point in the second half. Alpine 6th with 65, Haas right behind him 58. The team that really should be embarrassed is RB Honda, Visa Cash App. They were 8th. I thought they'd do so much better this season. They showed pace at times. They just never put it together. I don't understand.
They never strung it together consistently, did they? It was like you say, they'd have flashes of you can see why these are the kind of the sister team, and they're gonna sometimes maybe take it to Red Bull, and then nothing again.
Nothing.
And they were all over the map. I mean, Sauber were just bad. At least they were consistent. They were just bad all the time.
And Williams didn't look good this year. Like they didn't. It seems like they're on a journey, right? They're on
Nice
their
way of
way
saying
to a consistent car. We hope. James Vowles, we're all believing in you, buddy. And so we're hoping they're on their way to a consistent car. They went from a car in 23 that was fast in the straights and dog poop everywhere else to a car that's getting more consistent and better at fighting at different tracks. I hope.
Yes,
please God.
That's what I would say. Last year it had a redeeming feature where you could look at certain racetracks and say, "Oh, the speed of the Williams is going to help them out here." But whereas this year, there was never anything that really sort of stood out. Yeah, they kept popping into the points. I mean, what do you say they ended up on 17 points?
17.
Yeah,
Nice.
I think the Haas and Alpine battle was I like to sometimes look at the midfield battle. It was funny, like last year it was always the best of the rest. We were trying to not worry about Red Bull and Max. This year the top has been intriguing all the way through. Um, Mercedes was kind of the outlier because they were never in any danger of being caught by Aston Martin, but
Right.
they had the Nat Fart car that would just be unpredictable on them, which kind of ruled them out from chasing down Red Bull, say. So because you always talk about kind of like almost the three divisions inside the constructors. This year it was three, but it was McLaren, Ferrari, and Red Bull in one division, Mercedes by themselves, and then the rest.
Right.
You know, Aston, like you say, they bring downgrades and stuff. I was surprised, maybe I wasn't, that Stroll I thought had got more points than that. When I look at it, he's got 24 points over the course of the season. Fernando got 70, and we'll do a deep dive into the season.
Right.
I was just looking at the way things lay at the end. Was kind of like just interesting. It's all for next season. Oh man, I hope we're not proven wrong that next season is. We're all getting so excited that next season is going to be like the epic
Well,
of seasons of all time.
and Aston
But
Martin, maybe they're done with the downgrades. Adrian Newey will be
yes,
working there next year.
yep.
So, I mean, we may be looking at a fifth team up in that sort of mix for the top. And who knows? The Haas came on super strong at the end of the year.
I know. I'm just going to sprinkle one little
No,
um,
no
element of
negativity.
doubt, one little seed of doubt into next year because of where Red Bull finished. Finishing third, they
More
are
time
going to
and
get
wind tunnel?
more time, more
Oh, no.
one tunnel time, and all that kind of stuff. So anything that wasn't working on the car this year that they didn't have enough time to be able to rectify it, there's a chance that Red Bull come storming back next year. So who knows? I think it's just going to be exciting, and we've got
Do,
like 3 months now to build up to it.
do
But
you think that was the reason they kept Checo around so much? Is it maybe what you just said? Christian
don't want to
Horner's
finish
playing
second.
5D chess. He's like, we're going to win the Drivers' Championship, but we're going to finish as low as we can in the Constructors so we can have as much wind tunnel time so that at the last year of the regs in 25, we can have Max win it again. That is our move here at Red Bull.
He's just gutted that Mercedes was so inconsistent because he was thinking, "Ooh, we could finish fourth here and get some stellar wind tunnel time
Oh, boy.
because they don't need the money, for the prize money for where you finish. I don't think as much. So
Yeah. And since we're
anyway.
recording this so fast at the end of the race, we'll do fantasy and the fantasy wrap up next week. We did have some good battles there, and looking forward to kind of doing a recap on the season and handing out the winner's T-shirt next week. And again, we've done a few stats throughout, but no special SAP Stats edition this particular week, which kind of is fitting with the way that the race ended. On a boring note, we'll just let that one go and call it a day on the 24 season.
Yeah, and hopefully we will be catching up with Pitlane Paul next week. I haven't firmed it up yet, but kind of the lay of the land for the rest of the year is going to be an episode next week, which is hopefully Paul, and then you and I are going to try and just probably churn out some previous material so that we can take some time off over Christmas, right?
That sounds about right. We'll figure out exactly when and how that all happens, but yeah, it's been a great season. I gotta say, thank you to all the listeners and the participants on social with us and on the Discord with us, and just sending your notes and thoughts in. Rob and I have jobs besides this. This is it's a hobby pod, but we love it very much, and we put a lot of time into it and working on it and thoughts about it. And you guys, the listeners, the Dirty Siders, with us on the Dirty Side, make it worthwhile. And so I just want to say, as we close 24, the season, not the year, thanks, because it's made every race more fun. It's made every conversation about it more fun. Thank you, Rob. It's been a great race season, and we have a lot of off season. We'll have some fun doing a lot of other things. But as we close the races in 24, I've really enjoyed it, man.
Yeah, 100%. Loved our third season, and actually, just you mentioned the listeners. Because of how crammed the calendar's got, this year, it's kind of been more difficult to squeeze in kind of our DRS feature,
Yes.
where we get listeners on and run against the
Good
Who
call.
Wants to Host the Dirty Side quiz. That's not forgotten about. We're going to have like 3 months at the beginning of the year. So we will do another call to arms nearer the time as the new year comes in and we understand what our calendars look like, that we want to get as many of you on as we can. And then as we go into, we'll crown a champion of our Who Wants to Host the Dirty Side quiz, ready for the new season, where the winner chooses which race review they want to come on and do with us. So loads to look forward to, but yes, thank you for everyone who's listened this season. It's been amazing, and thank you, Brian, for not just the video vaults, but the endless stats that you research, and really upping your sound game as well this year, so that they've been at your fingertips rather than looking at the panic in your eye as you know you need to press a button and you can't find it. So you brought upgrades to the sound game, 100%.
I did. Well, I also got a new computer, and it made it a lot easier along the way. 10-year-old Macs were really not working for me. But anyway, yeah, thanks, man. I've enjoyed it too, Rob. Appreciate you. Appreciate all the listeners. And like we said, we're not going anywhere. We'll be here every week with something fun to discuss, think about, and talk about F1 related. So don't go anywhere. We'll talk to you guys in 1 week's time. Thanks, everybody. And again, you know what? While we're thanking each other before we hit the close button, thanks to Paul. Pitlane Paul is the absolute man. I know we already said that, but at the thank you portion, we'd be remiss if we didn't highlight all the amazing contributions of the third regular Dirty Sider, Paul. Paul, thanks, man. All right, with that, we'll talk to you in 1 week's time. Be well, be safe. Have a great week, everybody.